We have no confirmed casualties, very few injuries, and I'm just grateful with the destruction that we are in the process of assessing that we've had no major injuries. So first and foremost, thank the good Lord for protecting our communities. I've got a number of scenarios I'm going to cover very rapidly in this scenario. Before I do, I want to make sure I acknowledge the support we're getting from the state. We got TDM here, we've got Task Force 1 here, we've got the Forestry Service here. Regionally, the county is stepping up to the plate and supporting us very well. A lot of the local municipalities, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the city of LaPorte, the city of League City have sent cleanup crews to help us with trash. And so I'm very grateful for the regional amount of support that we're receiving. I've been in communication with a lot of the mayors regionally. I know Mayor Turner has offered assistance, and I'm just appreciative of how we in this region are coming together. And if there's any positive that comes out of disasters like that, it's good to see when regionally we come together to support one another. And the biggest thing I can say after I get through this data is that the biggest thing I'm seeing is neighbor helping neighbor, whether it be individual neighbors in Deer Park. I'm talking about city helping a city in this region, the county helping us on a local level, the state doing their job. And I'm very appreciative to be from Texas. I'm very appreciative to be the mayor of Deer Park and see how this works in a time of need. It's we as humanity need to get back to making sure we understand that it's about all of us, and taking care of each other is the top priority. So I'm going to go through a lot of things very rapidly. I'm going to mention a two-part component, some of it being prudent to the city of Deer Park, and then some of it's going to be a regional perspective. But for the city of Deer Park, we are waiving all permit fees and requiring to store restorations. Permits are required, but no fees are being charged. Individual assessments are being conducted. On the city website, we have a QR code that is set up through TDM website that you can access the city of Deer Park. And I would encourage everybody, whether you live in this city or in this region, to go on to our website and access this and enter in your general information in regards to assessing damage throughout this region. So all of us from the state all the way down to each city can have a good idea of assessing the damage. And you can go to our city website to access that. There's a QR code there. This is not an assistant portal, but it's a means to capture damage assessment. While I'm here at this point, we are in the middle of having some resources made available, which will be most probably starting tomorrow or into the weekend, where if any resident that needs assistance, they'll be able to access that through a coordinated effort regionally, whether it be from the city of Deer Park and Pasadena, but the county. We're setting up a coordinated effort to how do we make sure all of our constituents get the resources they need. Moving on, the county is sending us support to help us with fire inspections to make sure that as the power is being restored, we can adequately make sure everybody's safe. The city, again, of LaPorte and League City are assisting us with debris review, and I'm appreciative to them. Public Works is working very hard to make sure in the city of Deer Park that we have the bulk, if not all of the debris, removed by, if not tomorrow at the end of business, at least over the weekend. So our objective is starting out next week, we can have most of the streets cleared from debris, and making that also working in conjunction with CenterPoint that we get most of all the power restored in the next few days going into next week. Task Force 1 is here assisting us from the state, as I mentioned earlier, to assess the damage. The Forestry Service is working with our Parks and Rec to make sure we get the cleanup effort moved forward. If you do have a generator, I know every time we have a major event, it's always a negative scenario that when people use generators that are trying to provide power, it's always very disappointing to me that if you're using it, make sure you do it properly, the generator's not inside, not creating carbon dioxide issues, that can end to a very negative result. So I would warn all of you that are using generators, make sure you're doing it appropriately so we don't have a negative effect of someone's life being taken because of carbon monoxide issues. The streets are still closed in Deer Park in several areas. Center Street, P Street, Alice, and all that is due to power lines that are still down. CenterPoint is working very closely with us to address these issues so we can get that moving forward. So be cautious still as you drive around town, understanding that the PD, Public Works, is working very closely with CenterPoint to make sure we aid them in getting power restored as quickly as possible. Please be careful that when you're using parks or hike and bike trails in the city of Deer Park, there is still a lot of debris that is out, and so from any aspect of public safety, please assume that risk in your own scenario of making sure you're not putting yourself in danger while the debris is trying to be removed. The city on our website is deerparktx.org/tornado2023, and you can get to the link where we are spitting out additional updates as they become available. And obviously the press knows that we're sending them out as often as we get that updated. So I would recommend everybody go to that, and I'm going to restate it. It's deerparktx.org/tornado2023. The city is currently not in a position where we're accepting donations. I know we've had a lot of people calling in regards to how can you help. We're in the middle of setting up some aspect of how do we receive donations, but the emphasis right now is still trying to respond to this scenario, and the biggest emphasis, we're trying to assess the needs so we can also align up the needs with the resources that are needed in this region. So we're working closely with that. We encourage people to reach out to the neighbors and check on them. It's as simple as that. Ask them if they need help, and if some aspect, work with a local church. Salvation Army is very active in the area. If you need meals, there's opportunities around that you can go and get that. The police department is well staffed. We're doing a good job of covering the city, and we haven't seen an increase in calls and or any issues over the last few nights. And I know we've got support from local police departments that are supporting our staff in regards to that. Additional assistance that is being provided from TDM is regards to, in the next phase of what we're entering into, is looking at building inspection as we assess the needs to make sure structurally, whether it be commercial, apartments, and or individual residential homes, the state is assisting us on that to make sure that as we get back to power being restored, it's not going to create a secondary hazard or issue for you in the public. The Postal Service, I know in Deer Park and Pasadena, has been disrupted. If you haven't been receiving mail, there's a legitimate reason. Their facilities have been damaged or power hasn't been restored, and they're in the middle of getting that restored. The biggest question I would say most of us want to know is, when is the power going to be restored? Some aspect of the numbers are in Deer Park, we're still at about 2,700 individual residencies or properties still don't have power. Regionally, I would say from the impact zone of the tornado, we're still at approximately 5,000 structures don't have power restored. In the Southeast Houston area, due to significant damage, it will take time. The restoration work is essentially working toward being completed by the end of Sunday, and this is from CenterPoint, to those who can receive power. There is going to be some infrastructure issues that may linger on past Sunday, but if the infrastructure is still in place and you can receive power, there is an effort to make sure all power can be restored by the end of Sunday evening. The command center is still in operation at the Pasadena Convention Center, which is where CenterPoint is staging, and I know their initial response was with a certain amount of teams, and we've seen an uptick since yesterday where additional crews are in the area, and I'm very appreciative for the work that CenterPoint is providing in this scene at this moment. we're continuing to see significant progress in power restoration. I can say from my own residence, I still don't have power, but I do have a generator, and so I am grateful as we see every day making significant gains. I believe at this time yesterday, we were roughly at 16,000 still without, and we're down to 5. So I would say in any aspect, we've made some good gains in the last 24 hours, and I'm appreciative for that. The rest of the area that's been impacted, I guess in the impact zone, is still dealing with all this. And again, I'm in constant communication with the regional mayors, and I think we're all where we need to be. And yes, if you're going to ask me directly, it can't happen soon enough. We all are working very vigilantly to make sure that the power gets restored as quickly as possible. The needs are being assessed so we can line up resources with the needs. And more information will be coming out later today into tomorrow about how, if you have a genuine need, you can get resources directly to you in this area. And that's in discussion now, and that will be set up most probably going in tomorrow. With that said, does anybody from the press have any questions? Are we all good?
Yeah, on the new vision of the pool. They're asking if, have you spoken with the ISD to see if they're going to resume class? When will they resume class?
Good question. I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the ISD. They are closed today, and I am in constant communication with them. And from my perspective as mayor, it's a two-part component of trying to get a lot of the debris removed to make sure that the buses can commute efficiently throughout this area. So I'm not sure that decision will most probably be made right after lunch this afternoon in regards to the ISD's decision for us tomorrow, but I'm working with them very closely in that regard. Is that it? Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you all. We're good? We're good?
Played semi-pro for the Boston Red Sox. He put me on my first Little League team, and I was pretty good. I threw 95 miles an hour as a pitcher and an outfielder. I could run pretty fast. I was pretty good, but I will be the first to admit I wasn't.
That the PD, Public Works, is working very closely with Centerpoint to make sure we